So I wanted to do an analysis of, or just kind of go over Officer French's report the night of. I remember seeing Vanity Fair. I remember seeing Vanity Fair kind of talk about, or pulled from Officer French's report. So I just kind of want to go over what it says and maybe possibly try to see if we can't help understand a little bit more about the timeline from what we've heard from the Ramseys. So time is 1300, 12/26/96, 1200. Complainant and victim. It's going to be the Ramseys. And he's writing this at 1 p.m. I think. Yeah. He's writing this at 1 p.m. So he says the narrative is, I responded to 755 15th Street in the city and county of Boulder, Colorado at approximately 5:55 hours. So that's 5:55 in the morning. I responded approximately at 5:55 on the 26th of December 96 on a report of a possible kidnapping. Upon arrival, I met with a distraught Patricia Ramsey and her husband, John. John advised me that their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet, was missing and that their 9-year-old son, Burke, was asleep upstairs. John directed me through the house and pointed out a 3-page handwritten note, which was laid on the wooden floor just west of the kitchen area. He told me that his wife had found the note on the bottom of the step, a spiral on the bottom step of a spiral staircase, which led to the upper levels of the house. I'm uncertain about who moved the note. Okay. So we already know they asked questions about, okay, you told me that you guys found it over here, but you've already moved it. So I don't know who moved it. So he's making a mental note that, okay, a little bit of tampering. The note advised the Ramseys that their daughter was in possession of a group of suspects and demanded a ransom of $118,000 to be delivered by means detailed to them later in a subsequent telephone call. This is my problem so far with this. If Officer French arrived at approximately 5:55 hours, then how does this make sense? The October 97 issue of Vanity Fair, written by October 1st, Anne Louise Bardock. We see that Patsy called at 5:52 a.m. And when we timed it out, we saw that Patsy was on the phone for about a minute and 15 seconds. So would have pushed her if that happened at immediately at 5:52 a.m. Then she's off of the phone at 5:53 a.m. and about 15 seconds into the new minute. Right? Just hold on to that. Further down in the article, according to police reports, the Ramseys arrived home from the Whites at about 10 p.m. At 5:55 a.m., the Whites were awakened by John Ramsey, who told them to hurry right over. In an interview, Patsy said she called. So I'm already confused. Did John call or did Patsy call? That's what I'm confused about. And at 5:55, the Whites were awakened by John Ramsey. How? How were they awakened at 5:55 by John? Where is it? I guess we'll get to that later. At 5:55, right here, at 5:55, John was directing Officer French to the house. When would John have time to call When would John have time to call? Maybe it's a typo from the article. It could be. But that kind of threw me off because John couldn't have been calling Fleet White and him because he was taking the officer through the house. Okay. So where did that come from? I spoke with Mr. and Miss Ramsey while Burke continued to sleep. Miss Ramsey told me that she had gone into JonBenet's room about 5:45 a.m. to wake her in preparation for a short trip the family was to take later that day. She found JonBenet's room empty and then discovered the note. As she walked down the stairs, she immediately called the police. So that's from his perspective. But what they have told us is that she ran back upstairs. And so she checked JonBenet's room at 5:45. And to his knowledge, they immediately called police. But if we're getting technical, she says she ran back upstairs and talked to John. John had time to get out of the shower. Or maybe he wasn't in the shower. Maybe he was shaving. He changed that. That answer has been changed. So a quick inspection of the interior of the house, as well as talking to Mr. Ramsey, indicated there were no obvious signs of forced entry or struggle. Mr. Ramsey told me that the house appeared to be locked up as it had been left. The Ramseys have an alarm system inside the house, which was not engaged as is normal for them. They have a small dog, but he had spent the night with a neighbor across the street, which is also normal. Both Mr. and Miss Ramsey. See, that's funny. Like he was doing, let me see. Up here, he was doing, yeah, Mrs. Ramsey. Okay. Anyways, he changed it. He got correct. They had not heard anything unusual during the night, as there was no initial refuting evidence. I advised Sergeant Reichenbach that it was possibly an actual kidnapping, and we proceeded to control the scene as such, with Sergeant Reichenbach paging advocates, detectives, and crime scene investigators. Within 15 minutes, blank and blank and blank. Page 2, I think it's about 4 pages. And friends of the Ramseys arrived at the house. By 6:50, Officer Wise and Officer Barklow were photographing and fingerprinting areas of the house, and Officer Veach had collected the ransom note. Reverend of the St. Episcopals, I think that's, I forget the guy's name, like Hovac or something like that. Anyways, of St. John's Episcopal Church in Boulder, came to the house at 7:13 a.m. Okay, so according to the article, according to Vanity Fair, Fleet White got there at about 6:20 a.m. And then backup came at about 6:50. So the friends are there. And then the Reverend shows up at about 7:13. But joining a victim advocate that was already there, victim advocates, and in the house with others. Detectives Linda Arndt and Fred Patterson arrived at the house at about 8:10 a.m. I was concerned with gathering information from Mr. and Miss Ramsey. So he changed it again. Ramsey. They told me that they had spent Christmas the night with probably the Whites, and they arrived at home 2200 hours. So this is the police report. You know, what's funny is that, you know, John was in some interviews was saying 9 o'clock, 9:30. And that's why I was getting so confused, because the police are saying 2200. The police are saying this happened at 2200 hours. So Mr. Ramsey said that he read both kids read to both kids. So got home at 2200. Now, according to the Death of Innocence, John and Patsy's book, we know Burke was awake on the way home. JonBenet was not. According to John and Patsy, Burke was awake on the way home. When they were driving on the way home, he even helped pass out presents on the way home. Well, that's what we know. So, whatever happened when they got home at 10 p.m., somehow, some way, Miss Miss Ramsey said, oh, wait. Let me go back. Mr. Ramsey said he read to both kids for a short time, and then they were in bed by 10:30. 10:30. Okay. How are you reading to a kid who is asleep? That would mean if by the timeline that John gave us at 9 o'clock, he put JonBenet to bed at 9 o'clock, and he took a melatonin at 9:30, or he put JonBenet to bed at 9:30. Let's say 9:30, and he was in the bed by 10. It's impossible because you got home by 10. That's what you told the cop. But you came to the news telling the news that you got home by 9:30, put JonBenet to sleep, and you were in bed. But now we see here in the official police report that what you told the police is that we got home at 2200 at 10 p.m. and we put the kids to bed the kids were already ready to go. That means no matter how lively Burke may have been to get out and pass out presents to the people and to the neighbors on the way home, he was ready to go to bed when he got home. That's what you're telling me. And he was out like a light by 10:30. But this indicates to me, now you gave me a little give. This is where there's little give. You read to both kids for a short time, and then they were in bed. From what I understood, JonBenet was already out like a light in the car, and when you took her up and laid her down. That's what my understanding was. I could be wrong, but that's what my understanding was. She was out like a light. And so then it was just up to putting Burke to bed. That's what my understanding has always been. But you're telling me that JonBenet was kind of awake. Because when kids have this knack for waking up right when they get home, right? They sleep the entire way, but all of a sudden when they get home, they lean up and they're looking around, and yeah. So could it be the case then that JonBenet actually did wake up when you were taking her up on your shoulder? Boom, boom, boom. You laid her down. If we're going to go by this story, you laid her down and she opened her eyes back up. Dad, could you read me a story? Blah, blah, blah. This and that. I haven't watched the video, but I think I've seen like a still photo in passing and doing some research, or I think it was from somebody else's video or something like that. But I think the original author of the point that was being made was true crime rocket science. And I think what Nick was trying to say was, did JonBenet sleep in that room? And the point that he made was the lamp on the lampstand was still on. How? How was the lamp on the lampstand still on? It's possible that JonBenet woke back up because you had to read her a story to put her asleep. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Miss Ramsey said that JonBenet had been dressed in white long, I think this is long johns, I think, and a red turtleneck, which she would have had to put that on JonBenet. White long, but she would have had to put that on John in a red turtleneck. She would have had to put that on JonBenet because I think the night of, JonBenet was wearing a black dress at the White's party. So she would have had to, as John was reading to JonBenet, she would have had to change her. She would have had to have changed her into that, like top and bottom. So as JonBenet is going down, she's laying her down. JonBenet is being held up and the dress is coming off and I'm putting on the shirt. and then I'm putting on the long johns. So of course, you're going to wake a kid up with that. The kid is going to might be groggy, but you're going to wake a kid up with that. But if you turn the light off, if the light is on and you turn the light off like you should have done, the kid might wake up and say, Dad, can you read me a story? So dad comes in, picks up a book. Where was the book that you used? Maybe you took the book outside the room with you or something like that, because I ain't seen no book nowhere. When they did a sweep of the room, I ain't seen no book that can indicate that you were reading a book to her. Maybe you took the book with you outside, but I ain't seen no book. We can do another sweep of the crime scene. I ain't see a book. Whatever. Wherever you got that book from, you pulled it out of thin air and said, hey, yeah, absolutely, babe. I'll read your book. And then she goes down like a light. All of this was done within 30 minutes. And then Burke is bouncing off the walls or whatever he's doing. He can't get to sleep because both of you guys are focused on JonBenet in JonBenet's room. And we talked about in the analysis with Observe and how we could see sort of the disconnect or the space between Patsy and JonBenet and Burke. Again, we can kind of see that space coming into play when both John and Patsy are totally tending to JonBenet. We got to get her dressed and changed out of her clothes. And at the same time, too, we got to make sure that she's sleeping soundly and blah, blah, blah. And Burke is in his room, laying with his eyes open, waiting for somebody to read to him. And according to what you tell me, as soon as you go in there, all he wanted was for you to read to him. And so by the time he's able to come in, you guys are, maybe it was one, maybe it was two. You're able to go in, put him to bed. So anyways, JonBenet's and Burke's bedroom are separate and are located on the second floor of this three-story house, with the master bedroom on the top floor. JonBenet's bedroom has an access door to a second floor porch, which was locked and undamaged. As Mr. Ramsey made preliminary telephone calls to gather the demanded amount of money, he told me that the only other people who have keys to the house are their housekeeper and two relatives in Atlanta. Miss Ramsey told me that blank blank had spoken to her by telephone on the morning of the 24th and asked for a loan of $2,000. So I think she's talking about the housekeeper. Blank had called again later that day and seemed upset about an argument with her sister, and she made plans with Ms. Ramsey to come by the Ramsey's home or house while they were out of town and pick up a check which the Ramseys would leave for them. When Blank, Patricia Ramsey's mother, was advised by telephone of the incident, she asked that the officers on scene be told of Blank, often commenting on how beautiful JonBenet was and if Miss Ramsey was concerned about her being kidnapped. Miss Paul's comments were relayed to me by so-and-so. Now, from the very get-go, this is already starting to get messy. You're already starting to throw people's names out there. We ain't got no evidence. We don't know nothing. We don't know nothing. And you're already, listen to what I'm telling you. Listen to what I'm telling you. We are in the middle of a crisis where two people said they couldn't even think straight. Really? But what you're telling me is because on the phone, you couldn't even, my daughter, you couldn't even say her name. Couldn't even remember her name. You're so distraught, right? Kato, give her some credit. She's under a lot of stress. She's under a lot of pressure. You don't know what you would have done if you had kids who have been murdered. Absolutely not. I don't know that. However, I would expect the behavior to be consistent. Because if you're not using exact details and you're flustered, then I would expect you to be flustered now. what I'm saying, what I mean by that is you told me in no uncertain terms, very clear, went up there and you walked me through the house. And you told me, took my daughter up about 10:30, took my daughter up. Because that's the timeline we're going with. Took my daughter up, put her in the bed, read her story. While we we're doing that, my wife was getting her changed. After that, we went to my son's room, all under 30 minutes. Went to my son's room. He was ready to go to bed. He was ready to be out like a light. And so it didn't take us long. It took us about 5 minutes to talk to him. But he wanted to hear from us so much. And I'm pretty sure it took about 10 minutes at least to get JonBenet situated. But he was so desiring of being read to. He wanted to be read to so bad that he stayed up for 10 minutes with his eyes kind of blinking and so tired waiting that we went in there and he was awake and said, Dad, Mom, can you read me a story? Absolutely, baby boy. We will do that for you. And then at that time, when we read a story, he was out like a light. And then from there, didn't take us about 5 minutes. From there, it's 5:15. We go in the room. We're so tired. It's been a long day. Of course, been up since 6:30. It's been a long day. I'm ready to go to bed. My wife's ready to go to bed. But you know what? I'm not too tired. I'm not tired enough. You know what? I'm not. Matter of fact, my wife is tired. She's ready. She lays down and goes straight to sleep. She don't need nothing. But me, I need a melatonin. You need a melatonin. John, you've been up since 6 a.m. 6:30 a.m. No telling how long you were up before that, trying to get the presents wrapped, because we know how it is on Christmas night. You got kids, got some last minute wrapping that I'm trying to do, get these presents. So you could be up till 3 a.m. trying to get these presents, getting everything under the tree. But what you're telling me is that, everything was wrapped. We were organized to get everything wrapped, and yet you weren't, because you had some undergarments for your niece that were left out unwrapped. But what you're telling me is that you were so organized up to this point to get everything ready to go. And so everything that was for JonBenet and for Burke was, and, ourselves, for the family, was under the tree. So we went to sleep immediately. Okay, cool. You went to sleep immediately. But John wasn't tired. John wasn't tired enough. John was so wide awake he needed a melatonin after being up that long. After being up since 6 a.m., it is now 10:30. John still needed a melatonin to go to sleep. He wasn't tired enough. Everyone else in his family was done for the night. Tired. Don't need no aid. But John needed an aid. Who knows? Okay. But you're telling me, okay, 10:30. I put this on my daughter. I read this to my daughter, and I read this to my son. Very succinct. Click, click, click. So you're recollecting very well. But then you go into this alternate story. You start to put together stuff. Yeah. Getting the money ready. Who had keys to the house? Well, only other people with keys to the house are the housekeeper and my relatives. And we know it ain't going to be the relatives because the relatives are at home. So let's call the relatives. Relatives can't do it. But you guys are so tapped in. Miss Ramsey told me that. Now remember how distraught. Listen to me. Remember how distraught Patsy was. I think there was a report that Patsy was so distraught that she had a bowl. That's what John said. She had a bowl in front of her, getting ready to throw up. Couldn't do it. Laid out all over the couch. Can't think straight. Saw an article. I'm gonna go over it with you guys. The pediatrician came over, along I think with the corporate attorney Mike Bynum. I'm gonna go over that with y'all. But both of those guys came over, and the pediatrician they were so distraught. Both of them. John was pacing and pacing and pacing. So distraught. Really? Well, and I can't forget this. Patsy couldn't do no interviews. And like the pediatrician said, it wasn't that they were avoiding the police. They couldn't do any interviews because Patsy was heavily sedated. Really? So sedated to remember accurately enough to talk to the cops and say, I wrote this woman a check for $2,000. And not only did I write this woman a check for $2,000, this woman was supposed to come pick up this check. And not only was she supposed to come pick up this check, this woman had a problem with her family. This woman was mad at something. But this is the problem with the starting of that story and the planting of the seed. There's a seed being planted of it could be the housekeeper, because my housekeeper has my key to the home and she was supposed to come pick up a check. My housekeeper could have come in and stole my daughter. That's the seed that's being planted without even being said or mentioned directly, because I owed her $2,000. But what could have been the case and what they're trying to make a case for without saying it is, but she may have wanted more money because she was frustrated about something. So it could have not, she may have asked for $2,000, but she may have wanted more. And so basically she takes JonBenet in order to get more money, because really she needs more money. She was only able to ask for $2,000 because she knows I'm a generous person, but I would never give her $118,000. That would never happen. And so she's going to take it by force. That's what's being planted here. Patsy, you're so groggy that you can remember all of that line by line, specifically the point where this woman has an argument with her sister. She seemed upset again later on that day, because we talked to her on the 24th later. Bro, this is 2 days ago. On the 24th, the morning of the 24th, I had spoken to her. And again, later that day, later on the 24th, she seemed upset about an argument with her sister. Yo, Patsy, for somebody who is groggy, you got a pretty good memory. You could talk to the cops. When Patricia's mother was advised of the incident, she said somebody was often commenting on how beautiful JonBenet was. Oh, so we all got a theory right off the bat. Nobody asked, what the heck happened? What happened here? Oh my God. I'm in shock. Give me time to think. Yo. What time is this? About 6:50, 8 o'clock, 8:10. People starting to show up. So don't know necessarily what time is. But Officer French was close enough to hear somebody being advised on the telephone. He was close enough to hear that. And she asked that the officers on the scene be told of somebody often commenting on JonBenet's beauty. So Mama has a theory too. Y'all got a theory really fast. That's okay. These factors relating to so-and-so were given to Detective Arndt, and she began to develop background information on blank. Miss Ramsey told me further that blank lived in Fort Lupton with her husband, blank, and a 12-year-old daughter. Hoffman also has 2 adult daughters in their 20s, blank and blank. And she rents the house she lives in from her sister, unknown. We don't know the sister. Two other possible suspects were given by the Ramseys. One was an ex-employee who had been fired during the past summer and had threatened to bring Access Graphics, Mr. Ramsey's business. Bring down Access Graphics, Mr. Ramsey's business. His name is blank. Mr. Ramsey contacted his personnel department to gather information on blank for the detectives. But y'all can't come down to the station to answer a couple questions? You're so distraught. Y'all can't even think. You're pacing and pacing, and all you could do is look straight and cry. I think Kohler's book said John could do nothing but just hold on to Burke and just cry and cry and cry. So distraught, can't even think. Patsy's laid out. But y'all are giving suspects right out the gate. Right out the gate. Fast. My God. And you're saying, okay, it could have been somebody internal, Miss Hoffman. Could have been somebody external, my employee. Mom jumps on the phone and says, could have been so-and-so because he was always saying how pretty JonBenet was. And we know enough to tell you about the husband. We know enough to tell you about where they live. We know about their daughters. We know the ages of the daughters. We know that they rent a home over here. We know that they rent it from the sister. That's pretty detailed. For somebody like Patsy being on steroids and being out of it, and John being out of it as well, that's pretty detailed to be sitting down and to, I am uncomfortable with the quickness in which they are coming up with these theories. This is fast. They are coming up with these theories fast. And they're throwing that net far and wide. It could have been somebody at my job because they said this. They had reason to be mad at us. But in subsequent interviews, when you ask them who was it, who did it, this energy is no longer there. It's different because now it's like, oh, I don't know who it could have been. So-and-so said it could have been this. So-and-so said it could have possibly been this person. So-and-so said this. So-and-so said that. And it's never really, well, initially we thought about this. Initially we thought that. Initially we thought. All of a sudden it's, we don't know. It could be this person, could be this person. But the speed, and y'all could have went down to the police station for this. This is all the police wanted. Y'all could have went down to the police station for this. Easy money. But you were so out of it that you couldn't go. But you're so in that you can remember all of this. I'm concerned. Okay, blah, blah, blah. In past summer, because he remembers, John recollects when. Now, I'm not going to lie, man. That sounds like some snake behavior to me. Bro, why would you put my name on the docket? Why would you put me on the docket? Why would you bring me into it? What do I have to do with this? Bro, I'm way over here. I ain't got nothing to do with you. And you called me up. Hey, he could have done it. Okay. Second person mentioned was blank, who lives in Louisville. Y'all going out of state now. My God. Y'all going out of state. Okay. Lives in Louisville. She was JonBenet's nanny up until 2 years ago and had a very close relationship with her. This relationship was the only reason blank was mentioned, as the Ramseys were trying to allow for all possibilities. I'm confused, though. What possibilities? We still think that it was a kidnapping, right? By SBTC Victory, right? You're getting the ransom note together for a small foreign faction, right? People who have, see, I'm confused because if you read the letter like you told me you did, if you read the letter and you gave the letter to Detective Arndt, you gave the letter to all these guys, right? Officer French got it. Everybody took a look at it. And and Detective Arndt is like, hey man, put this on you so when the person calls, we got him tapped. We're looking for a high tech group of individuals. Why would we be talking about a single individual from your job? Or why would we be talking about or a couple of housekeepers or nannies or a housekeeper and a nanny? Why would we be talking about that? If this was truly believed to be a small foreign faction from SBTC Victory, why are these possibilities coming up? Because this is why I'm confused. Because if I truly believe that somebody came and kidnapped my daughter, who would have motive, and I really believe what's on this paper, that's what my language is going to be. My language is going to be, man, I just don't know, man. I don't know who would have a motive to come and take my daughter and claim that they're a foreign faction in SBTC Victory. And, I haven't offended anyone. But that's not what they did. They had plenty of people in mind to talk about. What? How? That doesn't make sense. It's almost like it said, man, it looks like somebody wrote this letter, and they took your daughter. Any suspects? Nah, but I do have a couple. Matter of fact, let me talk. I can't even talk. I'm out of it. I'm loopy. But matter of fact, let me write them all down for you. Let me write you their addresses. Let me get them on the phone for you right now. And let's try to trap them in a lie. What? Y'all mentioned a lady in Louisville that ain't seen that girl in 2 years. Okay. Between times of consulting with the detectives and the family, I walked through the lower level of the house in the garage. So somebody went out there looking for obvious evidence. Although somewhat messy due to the season, the residence did not look out of order. In the basement, I attempted to open the door leading to the area. Okay. I was wondering where Vanity Fair got this. I was like, what? Leading to the area where JonBenet was ultimately found, but it was secured by a wooden latch above the door. The door opened inward, and I was looking for access out of the house. Since the door could not have been used for that purpose, and it was latch closed, I did not open it. Okay. Shortly after, Detective Sergeant Whitson arrived at the home after 10 a.m. I was released from the scene and went to the police department to begin the original report. Just after 1300 hours, 1 p.m., I heard radio traffic concerning a 911 call and the discovery of a code black body at the residence, and I returned to the residence with Officer Morgan. I spoke with Blank, and he told me that JonBenet had been found in the basement by Mr. Ramsey, while Blank and probably Fleet White and Mr. Ramsey were looking through the house. Going into the last page, Blank told me that he had opened the door to that area. So probably Fleet White had told me that he had opened the area to the door earlier in the morning and had not seen JonBenet's body inside. I secured the area around where Mr. Ramsey had laid the body and assisted in getting the family and friends out of the house to close the crime scene. I left the house for the second time approximately 3:45 hours. Now, there's a note down here that kind of says, should this be 15:45? And I'm wondering about that because I think he's trying to say 3:45 p.m. And Officer Wise and Shunk were securing the front and back, respectively. Burke Ramsey was awakened by his father shortly. And this is after 1 p.m. After Blank arrived and he was taken to Fleet's residence. As soon as he was dressed, I did not speak to him other than to walk him to Mr. White's vehicle. He seemed confused and was crying. And Mr. Ramsey again told me that he had slept through the night. So the preliminary indications of the abduction of JonBenet Ramsey from the residence give way upon the discovery of her body in the residence. A homicide investigation is begun and continued by detectives with the reclassification of this incident to be forthcoming. Why was Burke crying? So if I understand this correctly, 1 p.m. comes. Burke is still in the bed this entire time. He's asleep in his room this entire time. Only when JonBenet's body is found is Burke woken up and bought out, and all of a sudden he's crying. So all within a very quick turn of events. You sleep, I wake you up, hey, your sister's dead. Get up. What? Sister's dead? Wah, boo-hoo, crying. I'm out of it. That's very fast.
The next thing I remember is going to another one of our friends' houses. Everyone was really sad over there. My dad came and told me, JonBenet's in heaven now. And he started crying. And then I started crying.
A few things that I want to...
When did you start crying? When did the tears come? Because right here, you're telling me that you started crying after you got to the friend's house. Everybody went. But the police report is saying that they saw you walking out crying. Because why is that important? Because you're telling me that you didn't fully grasp what was going on, so you couldn't cry. You couldn't feel. You stayed in the bed, you stayed upstairs to protect yourself, to stay in the safety, and you had hoped that JonBenet was okay, but you knew nothing. You knew nothing. And so the reason for the delayed response was because up until the point to where Dad told you that, JonBenet was in heaven, you knew nothing. So you couldn't respond. I got a problem with that. Because Officer French telling me Burke Ramsey was awakened by his father because y'all told me that he was upstairs asleep this whole time. He was awakened by his father shortly after Fleet arrived, or whoever this is. And he was taken to the blank residence. I don't know who this is, but he was awakened by his father shortly after. I did not speak to him but it would indicate to me that it was after JonBenet was found. I did not speak to him other than to walk him to Mr. Blank's vehicle. He seemed confused and was crying, and Mr. Ramsey again told me that he slept through the night. So John was particular about I won't say John was it didn't need to happen. You didn't need to say that. But John felt the need to reinforce now. And what I was going to say was John sort of reinitiated a conversation that was not even being talked about. Like, we're not even talking about if your son was asleep or not. Like, I don't care. Like, I haven't asked you that question. I don't care. Oh, no, by the way, he was asleep upstairs. Okay, I didn't ask you anything about that. And he, you know, he slept through the night. That's a problem. That right there is a problem. Somebody is trying to set me up, because John said, my son has been asleep. My son must have been real tired. He must have been real tired. What kid you know? What kid you know will sleep till 1 p.m.? Sleeping. Nah. Let me tell you what we used to do. We used to sleep till 1 p.m. Really and truly, we were in the room with the door closed, with the door locked, playing the video game. Really just hanging out in the room, not wanting to be bothered by our parents. I don't want my mom coming upstairs telling me to clean up. I'm over in the playroom playing the game. If I hear my mom coming up the stairs, or if I hear my dad coming up the stairs, then they probably coming up to tell me, get off the game, let's go do some yard work, or, you know, let's go clean your room or something like that. I don't want no problem with that. If I hear my mom coming around the corner, I'm gonna drop everything, turn the TV off, run around, go in my room and jump into bed. So I'm still asleep. But John made a point to be very specific and say, again, he told me Burke had slept through the night, meaning he didn't get up. Burke was legitimately asleep. But what Burke has told us is that Burke was like, I saw people come in. I was wide awake. I was not asleep. In fact, by the entire time that y'all were doing y'all's thing, so what Burke just told you, at 6 o'clock in the morning, when y'all came into my room, when the cop, from the very first time that the cop got there, I was awake. And I've been awake this whole time. So when we ask what John was doing for an hour and a half, and John said, I was looking out the window trying to, see if anybody was watching my home. It's possible that John had gone to the room to comfort Burke, to check on Burke, not to leave Burke alone, to tell Burke everything was okay, and to explain more about what was happening outside of the room. But just stay in here, stay put, don't move. It's possible that that was part of what John was doing during that time. Stay put, don't move, stay in here. If you need something to eat, if you need something to drink, I will bring you up something, because Burke ain't gonna be asleep on an empty stomach. Burke gonna wake up, be like, dang, I'm hungry. I don't know if Burke had a bathroom in his room. So Burke has to come out to go to the restroom. And if y'all ain't upstairs, then that makes it, and the cops ain't upstairs, that makes it easy for John to go pick up Burke and pull him outside, take him to the restroom real quick, sneak him to the restroom, bring him back out, put him in the bed. Stay in here, don't come out, don't say nothing, don't talk to nobody. If the cops come in, act like you sleep. That's possible. Who knows? Because what you told me, Burke, was that you're awake all night, all this morning. But what you also told me in another interview is that you had got back up and went downstairs. But John is telling us that Burke didn't get up at all. So who's telling the truth? The person that's talking about the person, or the person that's telling you about themselves? John said you stayed asleep all night, but you're telling me that you got up and went back downstairs or something. You snuck back downstairs or something. John is telling me that you were asleep that morning, but you're telling me that you were wide awake the whole time. You heard all the commotion. You heard everything. That don't sit right with me. Who's telling the truth? And then for the third thing that's a little bit more concerning is you said you didn't cry until you got over to Fleet White's house because you didn't know what was going on. You had no clue what was going on. But the officer is saying that you seemed confused and you were crying even before you got to Fleet White's house, indicating that you had been briefed or told something. Something had indicated to you that something was happening enough. Someone had told you what was going on enough to pull out tears. So someone had time enough to get through to you before you went at 1 o'clock, after 1 p.m. when JonBenet is around. Somebody had enough time to get close to you and get next to you and say, this is the case. Enough for it to set in and for you to be crying away from public eyes, for you to be brought in to public view, especially into the view of the officers, and you're already dazed and confused and crying. So he's already in motion of crying. He didn't come into my presence. Officer French didn't say he came into my presence and started crying. When he got into my presence, Officer French said he was already crying, and I just walked him to the car. He was confused. He was already crying. That is inconsistent. I'm going to leave it right there. But that clash of statements is crucial, because one person, the person that is being hid, because you're telling me we have nothing to worry about with Burke. We have nothing to worry about, is the story that John and Patsy have continued to tell. However, this man is making statements contrary to what you guys are saying. Serious statements contrary to what you guys are saying. You're saying he didn't know anything about what was going on. He's saying he actually knew what was going on. The officer is saying, yeah, man, I don't know about all of that, but on the ground, boots on the ground, before we had time to make up a lie, before we had time to make anything up, before we had time to get our story together, before anything happened, Officer French showed up and said, this is what I saw and what I observed. Because I can catch you without you trying to flip and manipulate and do all that stuff. I'm going to tell you what I saw. That's a problem. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. And until next time, take it easy.